I'd been with my fiancée Sarah for about 5 years and we'd been engaged for almost 3. Things seemed to be going well, or at least I thought they were. We had a wedding date set, everything was booked, and I was under the impression that we were both on the same page. However, about 6 weeks ago, Sarah told me she was going on a trip to Europe with her old college friends. She called it a once-in-a-lifetime kind of trip, and I was fine with it. I wasn't going to stop her from going on a trip with her friends, so I even drove her to the airport and helped her with her bags. I kissed her goodbye and wished her a fun time. That's when she dropped the bombshell. I was fine with it. I wasn't going to stop her from going on a trip with her friends, so I even drove her to the airport, helped her with her bags, kissed her goodbye and wished her a fun time. That's when she dropped the bombshell. As we were walking to the security line, she suddenly told me that we needed to take a break. It wasn't a serious sit-down, but it was still a shock. The conversation was pretty casual, nothing deep or serious. I remember thinking, what do you mean a break? But before I could even respond or ask her anything, she was already in the security line waving goodbye like everything was normal. I was left in complete shock at first. I didn't fully process what happened. I drove home thinking, I thought maybe she'd just made a weird comment because she was nervous about the trip. But over the next few days I tried calling her just to check in and realized that I was blocked on everything. I couldn't call her, text her, nothing. I even checked social media and I was blocked there too. That's when it hit me. She wasn't joking about the break. She'd seriously left for Europe and cut me off. Without any explanation or conversation, I gave it a few days, hoping she'd calm down and realize that she was being ridiculous. After 5 days of complete silence, though, I was done. I made up my mind right then and there. The wedding was off. And you know what? I felt good about that decision. Why should I be with someone who thinks they can just walk away whenever they feel like it? I wasn't going to wait around for her to decide when she was ready to be in a relationship again. She made her choice, so I made mine. I canceled everything, the venue, the catering, the flowers, whatever we had planned for the wedding. I even decided that she wasn't moving in with me either, which was supposed to happen in March. I couldn't work out where she was going to live when she got back from her holiday because it wasn't going to be with me. Weeks went by and I didn't hear a word from her, not a single message or call. Then, out of the blue, she called me. I didn't even recognize the number at first because she must have used a different phone. She told me she was coming back on Thursday morning and gave me her flight details. I was supposed to care about the details, but I didn't. I acted like everything was fine, as if she hadn't ghosted me for 6 weeks. I paused for a second and then simply said, "What does that have to do with me?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. She didn't know how to respond, and I didn't give her the chance to explain herself. I blocked her just like she had done to me, and that was the end. I thought I'd better let people know what had happened, especially since the wedding was off. We had a group chat with some of our friends and family. So I posted a quick message saying that the wedding is canceled and so is our relationship. I didn't expect the reaction, but people had questions. Everyone started asking what happened. I told them what happened. I explained how Sarah went off to Europe, decided we needed a break without asking me, and then blocked me for 6 weeks. They were all pretty shocked, and some people were even mad on my behalf, which honestly felt kind of nice. You never really know how people will react when you drop news like that. But it was good to have some support. Around 2:12 a.m., Sarah finally got in touch. She didn't say much at first, just asked me to call her so we could talk about everything. I wasn't having it, though. I told her that if she wanted to explain herself, we could do it right there in the group chat. She didn't like that and said something like, "This is between us, not for everyone else." Yeah, she made this public the second she walked out of my life without a word. She tried messaging me a few more times, but I kept it short. I wasn't in the mood to listen to her excuses. By 6 p.m., she was really keen for me to pick her up from the airport so we could have a proper chat. I told her that wasn't going to happen. I said that her plan wasn't my plan and that I wasn't going to run to the airport like a fool after everything she'd done. To be honest, I was still waiting for her to come up with some kind of explanation that would make sense of it all. I wanted to believe there was a reason. I was waiting for her to come back with some kind of explanation, but as the hours went by, I realized there wasn't going to be a reason. She wasn't going to come back with a grand apology or tell me there had been a misunderstanding. She'd made her choice, and I had to live with that. So, in the days that followed, I focused on getting my life back on track. I wasn't about to let this ruin me. I went through our shared accounts, making sure everything. I even changed the locks on my apartment because I didn't want her to show up unannounced and think she could just walk back into my life. I was done with that. I also started looking at some trips of my own. If she could run off to Europe for 6 weeks, maybe I deserved a vacation too. I figured I owed it to myself after all the crap she put me through. That's where things stand right now. Sarah will be back in a couple of days, but I'm not going to be there waiting. She can figure out her own way home because as far as I'm concerned, this chapter of my life is over and I'm moving on to better things. You were trying to figure out if you were truly ready for marriage, but before you could have a proper conversation with Sarah, she made the decision to block you on all platforms for 6 weeks. You were left with no communication, and when she returned, she made it seem like you would, but you didn't give her a chance to talk. This made you angry because, in reality, Sarah was playing the victim, telling people that you were being irrational and rushed in canceling the wedding. You knew you had to address the situation publicly because you didn't want her to keep manipulating the narrative. So you decided to clear the air in the group chat. That included close friends and family. Everyone was still talking about the sudden cancellation of the wedding, wondering what had happened. You posted a message explaining that Sarah had decided on a break without any conversation. She blocked you for 6 weeks and now expected everything to be fine. You said that you weren't going to wait around for someone who didn't respect you enough to have an honest conversation. You got a lot of responses right away, with people showing sympathy and saying they were shocked about what had happened. Sarah didn't say anything for about an hour, but when she finally responded, she offered a weak excuse, saying she didn't think it would escalate this far and that she didn't intend to hurt anyone. There was no apology or accountability, just an attempt to save face. Even though she explained the situation to Rachel, she kept pushing Sarah's perspective. Perspective? You said that your sister was heartbroken and that you should have waited for her to come back and talk things through. You were tired of repeating the same conversation. You told Rachel that you weren't going to wait around for someone who didn't respect you. If Sarah wanted to talk, she could reach out, but you weren't going to chase her later that night. Sarah finally messaged you, offering a half-hearted apology. She said she was sorry for how things turned out, but she still didn't take responsibility for her actions. She tried to make it seem like both of you were at fault, but you didn't respond. You knew there was no point in engaging further. A week later, you received an unexpected call from Sarah's mother, Lisa. She started off acting friendly, but after some small talk, she shifted the conversation to how. She said she was sorry for how things turned out, but still didn't take responsibility for her actions. She tried to make it seem like both of you were at fault, but you didn't respond. You knew there was no point in engaging further. A week later, when you thought the drama had finally calmed down, you received an unexpected call from Sarah's mother, Lisa. She started off acting friendly, pretending like nothing had happened. After some small talk, she shifted the conversation to how devastated Sarah was. She'd been like that since she got back from Europe. She was crying every day in a complete mess. You weren't going to let her guilt trip you, so you explained firmly that you hadn't canceled the wedding for no reason. Sarah had made choices that led to this outcome. Lisa tried to downplay Sarah's behavior, saying she'd just been nervous about the wedding. Everyone makes mistakes under stress, but you weren't buying it. Blocking someone for 6 weeks and going silent wasn't just a minor mistake. You explained to Lisa that if Sarah had doubts, she should have told you instead of disappearing. Lisa kept pushing, telling you to consider giving Sarah another chance. But you stayed calm and said that Sarah had plenty of time to reach out to you and she chose not to. At that point, you realized there was nothing more to say, and you were done with the situation. You had blocked Sarah again and were ready to move on. You understood that you had dodged a bullet. If this was how she handled challenges before marriage, you couldn't imagine what married life would have been like. The ordeal left you feeling like you wasted time, but at least it ended before things got worse. Now you were determined to move forward with your life and not dwell on what could have been. I had already made up my mind. The wedding was off and that was final. I thought that would be the end of the whole ordeal, but I was wrong. Sarah's mom, Lisa, wasn't ready to let it go. She called me up and said, "Well, if you won't talk to Sarah, at least come over for dinner so we can. Maybe we can talk as a family and work through this together." I was surprised she was inviting me to their family dinner, as if this was some minor argument that could be solved over a meal. I knew this wasn't going anywhere, so I politely declined, saying thanks for the offer, but I think it's best if we all just move on. With that, I hung up, thinking it was over, but of course it wasn't. The next day, I got a message from Sarah's dad, Tom. He was one of those old. He was one of those school types who believed he was always right. He'd never really liked me, but he tolerated me because Sarah and I were together. When I saw his message, I knew it wasn't going to be a friendly chat. He basically tore into me, saying I was throwing away a good thing and that I was ruining Sarah's life by not giving her a chance to explain. He even added a line like, "Men don't act like this. You should be standing by your fiancée, not running at the first sign of trouble." That really pissed me off. I'd been standing by Sarah for years, and this is how I was treated. I didn't reply because I knew it would just turn into a pointless argument. I was over it, but it didn't stop there. A few days later, I got another message. This time, it was from Sarah herself. She'd used another phone number to reach out to me. It was a long, drawn-out message with multiple paragraphs. She apologized for everything, saying she didn't mean to hurt me. She explained that she was confused about the wedding and needed time to think. She'd panicked, so I guess that's why she blocked me. Then she dropped the bombshell that she still wanted to get married. After all this, after ghosting me for 6 weeks and trying to blame it all on wedding nerves, she still wanted to marry me. It was like she was living in a fantasy where everything could just be reset with a simple apology. I sat there staring at the message, unsure of how to respond. Most of me was still angry, but a small part of me felt sad. We had spent years together, and this is how it all ended. It wasn't how I'd imagined things would end. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't forgive her. It wasn't just about the wedding or the trip to Europe. It was about trust. Sarah had broken that trust, and no amount of apologies was going to fix it. I couldn't marry someone who thought it was okay to disappear when things got tough, so I did what I should have done from the start. I BL'd the number she used to text me, deleted the message, and moved on for real this time. Afterwards, it felt like I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't tied down by Sarah's guilt trips or her family's pressure anymore. I could finally focus on myself and what I wanted for the future. It felt pretty damn good, but that wasn't the end. A few days later, I got another message. This time, it was from one of Sarah's bridesmaids, Katie. Katie and I weren't particularly close. She was more Sarah's friend than mine, but she was always friendly when we hung out in a group. So, when I saw her name pop up, I was immediately suspicious. The text started off innocently enough. She asked how I was doing and said she had heard about the breakup. It was the usual small talk, but I wasn't stupid. I knew she wasn't reaching out for no reason, so I kept my response short, saying something like, "Yeah, I'm fine, just dealing with everything one day at a time." Then she hit me with the real reason for a message. "I think you should hear Sarah out. Here we go again." I stared at my phone, debating whether I should even respond. Part of me wanted to. I could block Katie too, but I was curious, so I asked her why she thought that. Katie then went on at length about how Sarah had been really struggling, crying every day since she got back from Europe, and how she was too scared to reach out to me directly because she thought I wouldn't listen. I sighed, feeling the frustration bubbling up again. I told Katie, "Look, I've already heard all of this. I gave Sarah chances to explain herself, and she didn't. She blocked me for 6 weeks, and then expected everything to—" I told her that I couldn't just forget that. Katie kept trying to say that Sarah just needed space and didn't mean to hurt me. But it was clear what was really going on. Sarah had sent Katie to do her dirty work, hoping that I'd listen to someone else. She didn't even have the guts to face me. I was done. I told Katie that I appreciated her trying to help, but that this wasn't something that could be fixed with a few apologies. It's over. Then I blocked her too. I thought that would be the end of it. But then the next day I got another message from Sarah's cousin, Mark. I hadn't heard from Mark in months, and out of nowhere he was texting me, asking if we could meet up to talk about everything. I was so tired of everyone trying to drag me back into Sarah's drama. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know what angle Mark was going to come at me with, so I agreed to meet him for coffee when I got to the cafe. Mark was already there, looking a little nervous. We sat down, we had some awkward small talk, and then he got to the point. He said, "Look, I know this whole thing with Sarah has been a mess. I just wanted to check in and see if there's any way you two could work things out." I almost laughed. I told him, "Mark, it's done. There's nothing to work out. She made her choices and I made mine." He looked uncomfortable, like he knew what he was about to say wasn't going to go over well. I get that, but Sarah's been talking about how she thinks she made a mistake and, well, she's been hinting that. Maybe you could give it another try if you gave it some time? I shook my head. Mark, no offense, but Sarah had her chance. She didn't just make a mistake, she ghosted me for weeks and cut me off like I didn't even exist. That's not something you can bounce back from. He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't really hearing me. What if she's serious about fixing things? She's been talking about wanting to make it up to you. I shook my head again. I appreciate you coming here and trying to help, but it's not going to work. If Sarah wants to move on, that's fine, but I'm not interested in picking up where we left off. We sat there in awkward silence after that, both of us knowing the conversation wasn't going anywhere. Eventually, Mark said, I get it. I just thought I'd give it a shot. I finished my coffee, stood up and said, Thanks for trying, man, but it's over. It's time for both of us to move on. We said our goodbyes and I left. I thought maybe that would finally be the end of it, but no, the very next day, I got a message. I barely knew Sarah's aunt. We'd met a couple of times at family events, but we didn't know each other well, so when I saw her name on my phone, I knew something was wrong with Sarah's aunt. She started off by saying she'd heard about the breakup and wanted to see how I was doing. I was so over it that I asked straight up if Sarah had sent her. She said not exactly, but that Sarah's been struggling and she thought she could help. I tried to play mediator between you two. I was so angry when I texted back saying, There's nothing to mediate, we're done. I thought that would be the end of it. I couldn't imagine how much clearer I could make my stance, but Sarah didn't give up easily. She responded, insisting that love was worth fighting for, and that I shouldn't throw away years of what she claimed was a good relationship over a simple misunderstanding. That's when it hit me. Sarah had probably been telling her family a one-sided story. She was painting herself as the victim, making me look like the bad guy. I didn't bother replying to her message this time. Instead, I blocked her number and decided that this was truly it. No more conversations, no more explanations, and no more chances for people to guilt me into going back to a toxic situation. I was done for real this time. After that, everything finally quieted down. There were no more texts, no more phone calls, and no more random messages from her family members trying to guilt-trip me into taking Sarah back. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders for the first time in a long while. I could breathe without the constant drama. I didn't have to wait for empty apologies or wonder if things could have been different. I was finally focusing on what was ahead of me, and that was exactly what I needed. But of course, things didn't work out. I thought I was finally free from it all. I had blocked Sarah, her mother, her bridesmaids, and practically her entire family. I figured that would be the end of it, but Sarah wasn't finished. Her next move made me realize just how far she was willing to go to get her way. One day I received a letter in the mail. It was an actual letter, like something out of the 1800s. I almost didn't open it because, seriously, who sends letters? I thought it was just another letter, but the handwriting on the envelope looked familiar. I was curious, so I opened it. I didn't expect things to get intense. Inside was a long handwritten message from Sarah. She poured her heart out in pages. She said she missed me, regretted everything that had happened, and apologized in a way that sounded familiar, almost rehearsed. But then came the shocking part. She mentioned that she still had the key to my apartment. Let me repeat that. Sarah said she still had the key to my apartment, the very same key I had completely forgotten about. My stomach, I was taken aback. I had already changed the locks when things started going south between us, but the thought that she might still believe she had access to my place made me uneasy. I immediately got up and checked the locks again, making sure everything was secure. But that wasn't even the worst part. The letter wasn't just an apology. It was more like Sarah laying out a plan for how we could start fresh. It wasn't just an apology. Sarah was laying out a plan for how we could start fresh. She explained that she had been talking to her mom and that they thought we should try a coup counting. It was clear that Sarah wasn't just trying to apologize. She was trying to get her way back into my life despite everything that had happened. After everything that had happened, Sarah reached out again, suggesting we meet up and talk face-to-face to work things out. I was beyond annoyed. She seriously thought this was a good idea after ghosting me, blocking me, getting her entire family involved, and then acting like I was the one who needed to fix things. It was unbelievable, but it didn't end there. At the end of her letter, she mentioned that she'd already made arrangements for us to meet with a counselor. Not only had she booked appointments, but she hadn't even bothered to ask if I was interested. She just assumed I'd go along with it. I was amazed. After everything she'd done, I still didn't understand. She was still trying to control the situation, assuming that if she planned everything, I'd just give in. So I decided to write her back. If she wanted to play this game of sending letters, I'd go along with it one last time, but this time I was going to make things clear. I told her in no uncertain terms that I wanted to move on. I told her we were done. No counseling, no second chances, and no point in talking things over. I even told her to return the key, even though I'd already changed the locks. I made it clear that she needed to move on because I sure as hell had. After sending the letter, I felt pretty good about finally shutting that door. I thought that would be the end of it, but no. About a week later, I got another letter from her. This one was much shorter. She didn't argue or try to convince me to go to counseling again. Instead, she simply said she understood where I was coming from but still thought we should talk. Then she mentioned something that I was really freaked out when she said she'd driven by my apartment a couple of times and noticed I wasn't home. She didn't say why she was driving by or what she was doing, but the fact that she was checking up on me sent chills down my spine. At that point, I knew I had to do something more drastic. I wasn't about to let this turn into I thought it was getting pretty creepy and stalker-like, so I called my landlord to ask about installing extra security, maybe even cameras. I wasn't going to take any chances. Then things got even stranger. I got a call from my mom. She knew about everything that had been going on and had been really supportive. But this time she called to tell me that Sarah had shown up at her house. I got a call from my mom. She told me that Sarah had gone to her house and was trying to get her to convince me to take her back. I was furious. Sarah was crossing boundaries with me and now involving my family. She was trying to manipulate the situation through them. Thankfully, my mom didn't fall for it. She told Sarah that I had already made my decision and that she needed to respect it. Apparently, Sarah got emotional and started crying. But my mom didn't back down. She told her it was time to move on. After that call, I realized I needed to take one final step to put an end to this for good. I filed for a restraining order. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but I felt like I had no choice. Sarah was getting too close and I needed to protect my space and my family. When Sarah was served with the paperwork, she finally backed off. No more letters, no more visits, nothing. It was as if she had finally gotten the message. I didn't feel great about it, but it was the right thing to do. It was a difficult decision, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Looking back, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned that it's okay to stand up for your boundaries, even when people don't want to respect them. I've also learned that you don't owe anyone endless chances, especially when they've broken your trust. I've also learned that moving on isn't just about walking away. It's about protecting your peace in your future. So that's how it all ended. I'm finally free from the drama, and I'm focused on moving forward with my life. It wasn't easy, but I made it through, and now I'm ready for whatever comes next without looking back.